Good evening, everybody. Tonight we got Scott McCoy with us. He's going to teach us what files we can keep, what files to delete, and what he recommends for a file structure. Thank you very much, Scott. Take it away.
Okay. Thanks, John. Uh, Tonight, everybody, I'm going to use primarily the video. So if you're not on your Zoom watching me on the video, you're going to want to pull that up. I'm not going to do a screen sharing. I'll do it all through the video. It's just a little bit easier on my end to do that. A couple little things just to throw out for housekeeping before we get started. I've been losing internet connection. We've had snow all day here in central Illinois, and for some reason, the internet's going in and out. So if you lose me, you're welcome, and you don't have to listen to me anymore. So just in case something happens, that's odd. Um, and we're going to talk about file structure primarily here. I am not an expert on this by any means, but I have a little bit different way of doing it probably than most people and some of the other people that I've helped set up a structure. It just seemed like it was probably a decent topic to talk about. So this is really going to be for a lot of you who are brand new to xLights and getting things set up, or maybe you've just had your first year and you're going, oh man, I'm having some problems finding files and doing all of that. So hopefully this will help you out. It's one of those things that I thought would have been nice when I started several years ago, many years ago now, to just get a good practice in. So it's just good practice to have a good file structure. So we've all got a file cabinet, and you've got all these files. You put stuff in the files and so forth, and we all understand how that works. But most people do not do that on a computer just because they're not thinking about it. And when you get started with xLights, a lot of people begin with the basic, make sure everything's in your show directory. Now, I took that to heart when I first got started, and they said, no matter what you do, everything goes in the show directory. So I said, okay. But to me, having basically an IT background means it needs to be in that directory. And that was actually kind of incorrect. Everything needs to be under the show directory, but should be placed in other directories. So we'll be talking about that. When I say directory, I'm old school. I'm an old fart. So when I say directory, I mean folder for you younger people to create folders and kind of the new terminology for a directory. So I'm going to go through some of the general structure for setting up your directories or your folders on your computer. So we've all been taught you got a show directory. We know that. Everything that xLights uses needs to be within the show directory. The primary files go in the show directory itself. Those are the ones that it uses. There's 3 or 4 or whatever, and then some backups and those type of things. And that's where xLights will place them. But beyond that, I don't use the show directory itself as a folder. I create everything else underneath it. And a lot of people, a lot of others do too, but in some different ways. So here you see you've got the audio directory, a videos directory, and an images directory. These are underneath and inside the show directory. Then in the show directory itself, you put all those other files, the sequences, maybe some other audio files, some different things. And this is kind of really the structure that a lot of people use. Just put all these sequences and everything in the directory. So let's look at the images file or the images directory here. So here's my little smiley face. We'll consider that an image file. You have these other sequences that are all in the show directory, and they're all going to point to this images file. Then you're going to say, oh, I got a second sequence, and hey, I want to use my, logo or, so whatever the image is. I'm trying to think of a Christmas image, a Santa image or something like that. So you have a second sequence. I want to use it there too. So you point that one at that same file in that directory. Then you have another one and you have another one. So you have 4 sequences in this case, all pointing to one file. This is called a relational database or a relationship database. This is a typical method in file and data structures of databases, which is great. A lot of people call them SQL servers or SQL. And it's a relationship, meaning it goes somewhere in a table or in an area, and then you point other things to it. So they all use the one thing. And that is great for general programming and database work and statistics and all that kind of thing. It does not work well, in my opinion. Again, there's a million opinions. Mine isn't necessarily right, but it's the only voice you're hearing right now. And it's just a poor way of doing it when you have these sequences, and there's some reasons for that. So let me talk about this. So what I do is I create an xLights directory, not a show directory, but just kind of a generic xLights directory. Underneath this, I create all my subdirectories or folders. And so here you'd see there might be a media files and PSD, which is Photoshop, and website, projection, miscellaneous, whatever. These are under an umbrella directory that has nothing to do almost with xLights. Okay, xLights does not see these, it's not going to use them, but they're related to my show in some way. For example, website. If I'm going to do something with my show website and make files or whatever, then they're going to go here. But the structure is having all of these folders underneath the original folder or directory that I created for xLights. That way I know everything is under that master directory. Then you have your show directory. So it's just one of the other folders under my new xLights directory. Now the show directory or show folder is what it's called in xLights, is what the software itself is going to use. So everything goes underneath it. But I put almost nothing in the show folder itself. Everything has a subfolder. And I do a sequence naming as well. Now, to me, this was very important and something it took me a few years to kind of really get down to doing it the way I wanted and the way I liked it. I create a folder for every single sequence, and then I pre-name the folder. So for an example here, the first one is sequence, abbreviated, show start. So that is a sequence that I made that plays one time when my show starts every evening. Sequence announcement, just as a generic announcement. Then I have song. So I put in capitals before each one: song, Merry Christmas, song, Jingle Bells, song, 12 Days of Christmas. That way I know it's still a sequence. We all know that, but it's technically it's a song. It's not a generic sequence. Um, you could name them announcements or something like that. But to me, this separates everything out. So when I see a list, I know that that song and everything with it is underneath that directory. So you have the two sides under your umbrella xLights folder. You have the non-xLights related stuff, but it's still something to do with your show. Okay, maybe files where you get stuff put together or whatever. In this case, like media files, I keep all my audio and everything. Songs that I'm not using in my show yet, they're all there. Then you have the other side, which is your show directory. And everything that the show needs to run gets placed in the show directory and underneath it somewhere else. So I'm going to play with this one here just for the demonstration. The song Jingle Bells. Okay. I create a folder. In that, I name the folder song in capitals with Jingle Bells so I know what it is. And we're going to talk about that particular directory. So under the show directory, you have the Jingle Bells subdirectory or folder. And then in there goes everything. Now, this is what's different from the first relationship or relational database style. Instead of pointing everything to a media folder or an audio folder or an images folder that holds all your images, this has all the files that are related to this sequence. So it's going to be the sequence file itself, the actual audio file, any image files or video files that you're using for that sequence, and then other related files. What the purpose of this is I know that everything in this folder or directory is related to this particular sequence or song. And if I say, and I've had this where I've had a song that was, I don't know, outdated, or I didn't like it, or I changed too much stuff, whatever, I just didn't want it anymore. I can delete the directory. It gets rid of everything related to it, and I don't have to worry about anything breaking. which is probably one of the biggest things that I've seen of those that I've helped is they have a video file. So how many import a thing and they've got a matrix and it's got this video or a animated GIF or something, but that animated GIF is somewhere else under the show directory in another media or audio or video or whatever file, and then they can't find it. Or they deleted it by accident, not knowing if it was used, and now it broke something else in a different area. So if you keep everything in one spot, then it's all related. You can also rename everything. So if for some reason you wanted to name this folder instead of Jingle Bells, it'd be Jingle Bell Rock or whatever. You could technically do it, and everything stays in that area. The downside to that many people will say, well, if I've got a video clip or an animated GIF or some image or something, and I'm going to use it in 10 different sequences, then I'm going to have 10 different copies of it on my hard drive because it's going to be individually in 10 different folders. And that's exactly correct. And I would say that is not a problem at all because you don't want to lose. If you had an image of I use one that's a American flag or something. If I had it in a different directory and pointed 3 or 4 sequences to it, and then I deleted it out of that other remote directory, all those sequences break and it's gone. And in today's age, when for $99 you can buy a 4 terabyte drive, it's not really a problem of worrying about your storage of having these duplicated 3 or 4 or 5 different times. The next really cool part about this is when you have everything separated in a folder and that folder contains everything related to that particular sequence, you can duplicate the folder. So you can just simply copy and paste, create a duplicate folder, name it something else like version 2, okay, song Jingle Bells version 2. And then that way you don't ever destroy any of your old stuff and you're working completely with the new set of files. And that way it never touches the old one. So I don't like the relationship database in this scenario with xLights because if you start pointing all these outside sequences all to some remote folder or remote area that's got these files, then you're stuck. Plus, I've had some individuals who went, oh, let me go find that file. I've got it. It's in my images file, and they have 5 gazillion images in this one directory somewhere. They don't know what's being used, what's not being used. They can't find something. So that goes back to having this kind of a sequence. If you have media files that's outside of your show directory, maybe audio files, video files, whatever, but this is stuff that you could use and you want to keep them all together, put them here as a separate area. Then you can drag and drop them and place them in those other folders as you go. So I'm going to show you this is a couple real world examples here. So this is my show directory. And this is kind of the wrong way of doing it, in my opinion. Again, I'm not an expert at this by any means, but you see in the actual show directory, let me, I'm going to try to change this 1 second. Can't quite see the top there. Okay. So we're in the show directory. You'll have your backups, and then here's a music folder, and that's got a bunch of music in it, and you've got all these different things, but there's only a handful of folders. And then all the sequences and all the audio files and everything go all down in here, and you end up with something like this, which I've seen quite a bit, and I used to do. And it's just now, what do you find? What does this? What does any of this have to do with any of the other stuff? So it's really kind of just a bad way of doing it. Here is the correct method, in my opinion. So I have in this case, the overall xLights directory. Within it, I have these, like here's music, but this is not in my show directory. This is the actual show directory within it, which is where everything that's going to be live in the show with xLights is going to be. So for example, here, voice scripts. These are voice scripts of things that I have a Santa voice guy that does voiceovers for me, and here's where I put his script. That's really not part of the show, but it's part of the show. Does that make sense? So it's in my overall folder. And then in my show directory, I have mostly folders. You see down here, you have your xLights files that need to be here, but everything else is a sequence. So a sequence is a non-song to me. I could have made those announcements or something, but I just call them SEQs for sequences. This is my arriving, leaving. That actually opens my garage door and plays a sequence when we leave the garage. Um, Overnight playing, daily show pre-announcements, those type of things. They're not really songs. And then I have my list of songs. Bring Christmas Back, Carol the Bells, Christmas Town, Heat Miser, so on and so forth. So I can just see, and they're automatically sorted, of course, because they all begin with song, all of those. And then in each one of these, so Once Upon a December here, so I'll open that one up. Here's all the files related to it. Here's the actual MP3. Here's my Audacity file, my master Audacity file, because I trim it and normalize it and so forth. So if I need to rework that file, the original file that isn't even used in the show, obviously, is right here. So I could bring it up and do it. And then I have another directory underneath it, or folder, and that's for my garage projection. So these are all things that are related, because this sequence, this song, has video projection as part of it. So these are all files that are part of the projection. But again, they're all under that directory. I guess you can't really see that one directory there. Need to expand this out. I know my screen is pretty big for most people, so gonna be kind of tight. So this is the song Once Upon a December. Well, still not going to show that to you. Transform, fit to screen. So my sequences, my songs, Once Upon a December song. Here's all the sequence and stuff itself, and a separate directory underneath it, which is only for garage projection. And that allows me to get to all those files with my garage projection. This way, if I delete this folder, then, okay, so I'll just do it right now. So here's Kid on Christmas. This has all the related song and stuff in it that I need. And if I delete that, it's gone. And all the related files. And I know it did not touch anything else that is within my folders and my directories. So that's pretty much it. This is pretty simple. It's mostly just a conceptual system today, and it's like anything. If you don't want to buy a file cabinet and then just stack all of your papers in the file cabinet, you want to separate the drawers, and then you want to have the files, and you want to have sections of the files, and you put everything individually in the file. And it may seem like a little extra work, but it saves you a ton of time the further down the road you get, when you say, oh, I got to find this file, or I don't know, or whatever. And you're making copies. If it's used in multiple areas for multiple sequences, then put that file, just duplicate it and put it in multiple areas. And then that way, that's the one that works with it. And you don't have to do something separate and try to tie them all into one thing. That's pretty much it for today. It's more of a beginner class of some housekeeping and really basic setup of your file system. So we'll take questions. And again, there's a lot of people, almost everybody else in this room is smarter than I am and have a lot more experience than I do. And there'll be other opinions and other ways to do different things. And none of them are bad or wrong. They're just going to be different. This just happens to be the way that I structure files, to try to be as simple and as easy and really the least destructive as possible when you do things like moving files or coming up with a second version of a song and you want to duplicate it over, that sort of thing. So, John, if there are questions or anything, or anybody else wants to chime in with their ideas on file structures, we can do that.
What files would they have to bring in from last year's sequences to get into these new folders, and which ones can they just go ahead and delete from last year?
Well, if they have last year's in all in one directory, it's this is just my opinion, is you're going to want to duplicate your entire xLights folder and start moving things around and getting your structure back put together. That's what I did on year 2 or whatever it was, when I just said, well, I got to really structure this better. And I broke a lot of things. So you just have to be careful and start moving them around. Of course, you've got the key bindings and whatever, and all those 3 or 4 particular files you have to keep in your show directory. But I would duplicate the directory, bring them over, create one subfolder at a time, song, nut, rocker, and then grab all the related files that you think belong there, move them into there, and open up the sequence, let it make sure everything's tied together in that one, and then you're good. But it's to get out of a bad situation, it's going to be quite a bit of work. That's why I say this is really hopefully something people who are new in the hobby say, okay, this is the way to set it up from the beginning, and then I won't have such a big problem down the road. And quite honestly, in my case, that's what I did. I created a new directory, new show directory, show folder, old school, show folder, and I just started over. I made a copy of it so I didn't lose any of my other stuff, and then I just started moving one thing after the other and did them all at once, and then load up the sequence, checked it all, made sure it worked, all the files were there. If I was missing something, go find it. It was a heck of a lot of work. Um, but
Can,
now I don't have to worry.
You want an
can you
Apple machine or a
show
Windows machine? Are you on an Apple machine or a Windows machine?
I'm on a Windows. I will not touch Apple.
So your xLights directory, is it off your root directory or is it off a user's /username /?
Okay, so I do not use the typical file structure of Windows like that, where it's user and so forth. I have a secondary hard drive. Actually, I have 5, 6. I have 6 additional hard drives in this particular machine that I use. And on one of them, which is drive D, happens to be the drive. So it's my non-Windows boot drive. It's just a data drive for me. And then I from under there, I create a secondary xLights folder underneath that. And then I do my show folder and all my other stuff. So it's on a secondary drive, because if Windows goes out, Windows craps, an update happens with Windows and it destroys it, etc. My main C drive is out. I swap it with a new C drive. I can boot, and all my data drive is all separate, so it's all still intact. That's how I do it. But I don't put anything in users, documents, that type of area like Windows wants you to do. I just don't do that.
a total newbie question here? Can you describe those? I think you kind of said, quote unquote, 4 or 5 files that individually have to be in the show directory. Can you show those, please?
Sure. So in the show directory itself, and there may be more. Again, if you import sequences and that sort of thing, I don't do that. I make all my own sequences. So there may be additional ones that pop up here. Somebody else need to chime in on that. But you have can you see these down here at the bottom? Again, I know I've got a big screen, but it's xLights key binding. They're XML files. And then I have one that down here is a backup for RGB effects. So basically it's these 3 files. And those are the ones that have to be in that show directory, the show folder that xLights knows is the show folder. You can't really move those. I mean, you might be able to, I don't know, but I don't think so. And I sure wouldn't.
the names are completely invisible, but they're basically .xml files, three of them.
They're XML files. That's correct.
Key bindings, RGB effects, and networks.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is my first year as well, and just learning. So, I am going to be using FPP. So when you go into FPP, do you have to click on the individual folder and then upload the FSEQ file? How does that work? If you
No,
have
so FPP, that's a good question. And when you do your upload to FPP through xLights, because of the show folder, it searches your show folder and they're all there. It'll show you they're in separate directories underneath, but as far as you're concerned, it's just going to give you the list. You check mark what you want to upload and they go. So having them in subfolders does not impact the upload.
I see. Okay, and I will be running it with the Raspberry Pi. That will have no bearing on it, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you just
Yeah.
go. Where do you go in xLights? I'm sorry, I'm really new. You just go
It's Tools FPP Connect.
choose definitely. Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. So, and that's one of the reasons that xLights needs to know what the show folder is, because it searches that show folder and subsequent folders underneath it. So if it's outside of the show folder somewhere, it'll never see it there. But it'll go and it'll find all your sequences, and then it'll just list them. It'll show you they're in separate directories. I think it actually gives you the path, but it kind of irrelevant. It'll just give you a list, and you check mark the ones you want.
You said you use Windows. What's your hardware?
Well, okay, so I'm on a it's gonna be kind of hard to explain. I'm sitting in front of 11 monitors right now and multiple machines that I use, but my primary one is a Windows 11 machine. It's an i9. I think this one's 64 in RAM and 5, 6, 7 total hard drives just on this primary machine and 11 monitors.
Do you use a video card?
Yeah, absolutely. Multiple video cards and multiple processors. So my situation is going to be a little bit different because of this is my work office. This is not just a home office. So, and there's a lot of things that I do from video production to you name it. And I have multiple machines that all work together and everything. So the mouse flows between everything, et cetera. My primary machine here is my primary. I have a secondary one that's sitting right to my right, and it's a completely separate processor. It's an i7. I think it's got 32 on it, and two hard drives, et cetera, in there. And I can throw work to different machines. I've even got machines behind the teleprompter video that you're seeing me on here that I can see up on my screen. Actually, if I turn my thing, you can. This is the back. If you look at my picture, that's me facing backwards, so you can see all the screens behind me. But so yeah, I do multiple things in multiple areas. It's not just one machine.
The machine you use to do your sequencing on, is that the i9 with 64 mega or gig of RAM?
I do the sequencing on all of them. Okay. It just depends. If my i9 is busy, I just swap over, KVM it over to the i7 and I use that. And at worst case scenario, if all my machines are busy processing video or something, then I jump on one of my laptops. This is I don't even know what this one is. i7. It's an i7 laptop. I don't think I have anything smaller.
Do you have a separate computer that you just use to run your show during the season?
During the season, I use the Pi, obviously, with FPP. So my setup exists all in my garage. The Pi is out there, all the controllers, all the power supplies. I have a small enough yard. Well, a couple different things. Winters in Illinois can be crap. And I don't want to be outside fixing things and having controllers and problems and all of that. So everything goes in my garage. So from here, I talk to the Pi, I upload it there, and then it just runs. for those who don't know what FPP is and the Pi, it's a little small computer. I thought I had one here. I don't. This is not a Pi, but it's about this size. Okay, a little small, little box, and you upload everything to it, and it runs your show and your controller. So it's only that piece. Just for information of how I do this, for me, because everything's in the garage, it's all together on one power source. So I have a circuit that goes out there, obviously, and runs it. Then I have a bundle of UPSs, which are uninterruptible power supplies. And I want to say it's, I don't know, 7 or 8 different ones. And they operate the show. Everything for the show runs through them. And other than xLights, I have a couple AC things. And I don't run them through that because they're irrelevant. So if I lose power, it protects everything. Number one, I want the protection out there, which saved my rear end last year. Number two is if we have a power outage, my show can run for like 2.5 hours, maybe just on those battery backups, and nobody would be the wiser that my show was gone. So I communicate with these. So nothing of my show runs from my office, which is located in the basement. Does that answer that question?
Yes, yes, it does.
Yeah. I would not use a computer to run it. I use the Pi. If you're not doing it already, look into it. A little bit of work, get it set up. Runs, it's super smooth. There's a lot more features with FPP. It's really just the way to go. In fact, I'll say show, but my equipment runs 24/7, 365. It's actually all running right now. And I use small controllers in the summer, like the RGB to go Duo, which is just a 2-channel and 2-port. And I've got things like landscape lights and a big logo on my big MC logo for our name above the garage that glows, and it's green for St. Patrick's Day or whatever. So it runs kind of like a little show all year long. It's mostly landscaping stuff. But that way I don't have to worry about it running with any of my main machines. Other questions?
Yeah, if there's no, go ahead.
Jake, did you have a question?
No, sir. Sorry. Mic off mute.
Oh, no problem.
Mark, what's your question?
I'd have to say it's good to see that someone prefers doing file structure where it's a folder per sequence. Because a lot of the times when I'm on Zoom helping people, and John and the regulars know on Zoom, when you're helping someone diagnose a sequence, say images cannot be found, they're coming out red, it's just such a pain to search for one big folder called videos or called photos. And people make mistakes, people delete the wrong thing, which was in use with another sequence, and then that ruins it. So it is good, I reckon, if people are willing to change their show folder to be a folder per sequence, it certainly helps. And even maybe you have a workflow where you have a sequence folder called unfinished sequences, and then that entire folder with everything to do with that sequence then gets shifted to the completed folder. That can really help, having all sequences in one folder.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point, Mark. You can do it with the same structure that I showed. So it says song, jingle bells, or whatever. And then you can just use the word unfinished behind it, or an X or something. Or sometimes I put old or the word retired. If I don't want to delete it, I'll just say retired. But you just change that directory, that folder, and that way you can mark different things. So you don't have to move a whole folder later once you finish it. But you're right. Losing stuff that's pointed all over the place, to images over here, videos over there, audio over there, plus the original, that's probably the biggest part that I see people struggle with. Even if your sequence is working and you say, you know what, I got this, I want to cut the song down the audio or something, or I need to bring the audio up, the level, then you need to load Audacity and put it in there and create the file. Well, I do all of that first in Audacity, but then I keep, and I showed this in my structure, I keep the Audacity master project file in that directory too. So if I ever say, I need to go back in there and just tweak that, I don't have to start over. I just pull it up and then re-export a new MP3 out, and all my changes and all my original project file are all right there. So everything you need for that sequence is right in that folder. It's just an easy way of doing it. Plus, you can package and back up a lot easier too.
Yeah, that's another good point when it comes to packaging sequences. Once if it's all in one folder, it's easy to share to someone else.
Right. It's exactly right.
Anybody else have any questions? In that case, Scott, I want to say thank you very much. It's very informative and looks like it could be a better way to do it overall.
Appreciate it, John. Glad everybody was able to stop in. I know this is kind of a simple thing for a lot of us that have been doing this for a while, but hopefully the newbies and all of you, congratulations getting in the hobby. You'll have no more money or life at this point, but this should make it a little bit easier on you.